I'm Dr. Tony Farrell, the chair for the Department of Education and Liberal Arts here at Ashford University. The faculty and staff for the Department of Education and Liberal Arts wish to welcome you to session 7 of our 8-part webinar series, The Dog Ate My Mask, Schooling and Parenting During a Pandemic. Today's session is titled Voices from the Field. We have a great group of panelists today. These professionals represent a variety of positions within PK-12 education. We have gathered questions and themes that have emerged during this webinar series. We are excited to hear from them. So a few reminders before we start today's webinar. First, the chat will be open to questions. Doctors Maxwell and Reef will respond in the chat or will break them for our session today. At the end of our time today, there will also be additional time for questions. Finally, there will be a survey sent to you at the end of today's webinar. Please take the time to complete the survey. We are gathering questions for next week's final webinar session. Hi, Fran. I think you have to unmute.
Hi there, Tony. How are you?
Good. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I am a school counselor at Los Penasquitos Elementary School, which is located in San Diego. We are part of the Poway Unified School District. I have been here for a few years, being about 17. I'm really fortunate as a counselor to be at one place for so long. So working hard to help elementary kids create success right now for now and their future.
Welcome, Fran. Betsy.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Betsy Kannenberg and I work as the Director of Special Programs in San Marcos Unified School District, which is in North San Diego County. And I'm also the mom to 2 students. So I have a 4-year-old and an 11-year-old.
Welcome, Betsy. Kim. Kim, I think you're on mute. There you go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Miller. I'm a certified teacher. Also have a certification in administration. I normally teach, but this year I'm not teaching. However, I'm a parent of 7 children, and all of them are adults. So I have several grandchildren that are all school age.
Thanks, Kim. Newton.
Hi, everyone. I'm Newton Miller. I'm currently in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm an admin intern at Yates Mill Elementary. I also have 3 children, 2 of them which are in elementary school ages as well.
Welcome, Newton. Okay, Michael.
Hi, Michael Stewart, Assistant Superintendent of Operations and Human Capital for the Maricopa County Regional School District in Arizona. Parent of 2 great kids, 16-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter.
Welcome, Michael, and all of our panelists for being here today. So we're going to jump right in. So this first question is going to be addressed to all of our panelists. So it's 3-part. So panelists, how has your district navigated the situation around COVID-19, and what is the most positive moment or surprise that came out of schooling so far this year? And then what's the one thing possibly keeping you up at night? And I'm going to toss this to Fran to start.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Hey, I didn't mention my kids. I might get in trouble if I don't bring them up. I have 2 adult daughters who have also graced us with 4 grandbabies. And I'm really acutely aware of learning right now because my daughter that has 3 kids calls me every day. She's home trying to teach them. So I've got a great perspective on what she's going through. You know, I think that our district is probably doing the same as every district around the country. We are almost forced into a position of taking things a day at a time. You know, in California, as of yesterday, we thought we were going back into a tier 1 and having to put on campus school a little bit farther off. So I think we're just kind of really trying to listen to all the stakeholders, try to understand what each stakeholder wants or needs. That's difficult because we're not going to please everybody. You know, we have about 40% of our community that wants to stay in virtual for the rest of the year, and we have 60% that wants on campus as of yesterday. So just really working to try to find the balance to serve all of those needs. As far as positive, I've been really, really proud of our district. I've been really proud of my school in particular, which I'm closest to see these teachers pivot and figure out how to do school completely differently than they've ever done before, reinventing all kinds of new wheels, and doing it with such a positive, collaborative attitude and keeping the focus on kids. It's been awesome. And likewise, to see our parents being so flexible and supportive. I mean, it's really been a very positive thing. As far as what's keeping me up at night, the unknown, all of the changes, you know, that's hard. Every night I go to bed and it's like, well, let's see what tomorrow brings. So that's tricky. And then just knowing that all the things that we were putting into place that are so new and so different, are they actually going to work? Because we've never tried some of these things before. So lots of fun.
Thanks for sharing, Fran. And I know just being around your people that you guys will adapt to anything that's thrown your way for sure. So Beth, what about you?
I echo a lot of the sentiments that Fran had. You know, there really is no manual for educating during a pandemic. So we have had to respond to this situation by being adaptive, responsive, strategic, most important of all, flexible, and of course, putting students at the forefront of all of our decisions and actions. You know, here in San Diego County, we closed our campuses on March 16th, and we have yet to physically reopen them to kids. So what that means is we really had to take a look at, first and foremost, are our students' basic needs being met? Do they have access to food, first of all? So our child nutrition services and transportation departments really came together and immediately sprung into action to distribute about 10,000 meals, you know, every day to get those out to families who are in need. And then of course, making sure that our families and our students have access to those mental health resources and supports that they need. Do they have somebody to talk to? There's an insurmountable amount of stress right now on students and families, and that mental health piece is really critical. And then of course, the instructional component. Our students cannot physically come to the classroom, so we had to quickly pivot and determine how we were going to bring the classroom to them in a virtual format. So then of course that meant first and foremost, does everybody have access to that instruction? That meant quickly getting devices out to every single student, a Chromebook, getting those mobile hotspots out to families who didn't have internet access, getting the instructional materials that kids needed, and then really making sure that we were finding ways to support our staff. Because as Fran said, you know, we had to completely overnight change the way that we did business and change our instructional delivery models and the pedagogy. So getting our staff access to really high quality professional development and giving them that time that they needed to plan. So I think that was really our plan of attack, so to speak, in how to continue to meet students' needs and really get them access to that high quality, rigorous instruction that they rely upon. If I had to think about the most positive thing that has come out of this, I would say that out of crisis comes innovation. So there has been such an outpouring of collaboration really among teachers and educators across the entire nation and the world really, in terms of sharing ideas and practices and really redesigning instruction to meet students' needs and maximize their engagement in this new virtual platform. It wasn't really realistic to say, well, we can just keep doing exactly what we were doing in the classroom and go on Zoom and just not miss a beat. We had to make a lot of adjustments and adaptations. So really just seeing that outpouring of collaboration and just seeing the new and innovative ideas that teachers are coming up with has been truly phenomenal. And then, of course, really that sense of community, and we've all come together for this common purpose. You know, we are truly in this together. And what is keeping me up at night is probably similar to what's keeping most people up at night. You know, just worrying that everybody is going to be okay. Do they have their needs met? Do our families have access to everything that they need just for their day-to-day lives? A lot of families have been very hard hit with unemployment. And, you know, are the kids able to have a safe place to live, and access to food, access to instruction, but also access to all of those community supports and resources that they need to not only survive, but thrive during this time.
Wow, lot to unpack there, and I'm sure we'll get into those specifics later on. But I'm interested to hear from Kim. Kim, what do you have to that question?
Well, it seems like Fran and Elizabeth covered basically the first part of that question about what's happening with the districts. Me not personally working in a school district at this time because we've relocated. However, the end of my school year sounds exactly how Fran's and Elizabeth's school year is still going now, where teachers were trying to figure it out. And I think that's what's happening now. The way I stay in touch with the school district here is by watching the board meetings and talking to the different people who are a part of the school district just to hear what's been going on, as well as receiving messages from parents who know I'm an educator, just asking for support. So I would say it's actually happening the same way all the way around, that everybody's just trying to figure this thing out. And I would commend teachers as well who were really nervous about this full virtual classroom, but they're actually putting it together. The thing that I would say is that's the most positive would be all the partnerships that I see happening in the community, even our local mayor's office, the city workers. There are people who are looking for grants to put money together to help support parents to get the training that they need to help their children because of this marginalized school district or area that we live in. So those people are in need of more resources than the school can actually give them. The children are getting the connection with their parents, where parents are actually home teaching them. So that relationship is building, which I think is very positive. It's kind of like that my brother's keeper mindset has happened in the community. So there's a lot of community development, and I think that has really supported, or that's been like the highlight that I've noticed. What's keeping me up at night is trying to figure out when to turn it off. I actually do something called Ami's World, so I kind of come up with lessons and things to share with the community, trying to figure out when enough is enough and how to turn it off. That's probably what keeps me up at night. That's about it.
Great, thanks, Kim. And I'll echo the community involvement and the community coming together, families coming together to help support kids, whether it's in their household or sharing space with multiple kids. That is, to me, I'm seeing that all over the place with families. How do you respond to the question?
So in our school district, they pretty much did the same thing. They shut everything down. Everybody's home. Right now, we're working, at the school level. Well, they're working at the district level for a reentry plan, and we're taking what they're saying and trying to figure out what we're going to do about the kids when they come. So that's still a working process. So the thing that is actually most positive for me, because I work at, in the school, and at the school level, I get a lot of feedback from parents and children. And the feedback, believe it or not, is actually pretty good. A lot of parents actually like what's going on. They appreciate their teachers. They appreciate the grace, from the school, to home, and understanding that there's different circumstances at home. And the kids actually like it even more. They actually enjoy, of course, being on the computer. So that was a positive for me. That kind of gives us a boost and that energy that we need, when we're feeling down in those PLTs or those planning sessions. Just that. Oh yeah, well, the kids like it, the parents like it. Let's just keep going. But the thing that keeps me up at night is, so at our school, I was in charge of making sure that all of our parents got on this list to get technology. And because of the particular school that I'm in, we're in a Title I school. Unfortunately, a lot of parents didn't already have, devices for their children. So that was a challenge. And to know that we're this far in the school year and there's still kids who don't have devices to get on just keeps me up. And I think that it will continue to keep me up at night until I know everybody has at least a device to access, their classroom.
And I think that's probably, for me, one of the most heartbreaking pieces in this is the accessibility to technology. And we have to make sure that we get devices in every kid's hands. So Michael, from an operations perspective, how do you respond to this question?
I mean, it sounds weird, but I wish it was just the pandemic that we were dealing with. When you factor in all of the other, social and racial justice movement issues going on right now, it just adds more layers of complexity emotionally for everyone. But I think we did a pretty good job of preparing for it even before, not knowing what was coming, but we're real, as a district, purposeful about not making assumptions and really being there for our students. So, when it first hit, like everyone kind of jumped into action. Like other people have said, is like, let's do some quick surveys and go door to door if we need to and find out who needs what, who needs a laptop. Remember when it first kicked off, who needs toilet paper, who isn't getting the food that they need, who needs baby food, who can't go out because they're at an increased risk. And that kind of leads into my shining point, is that, you don't need the title of a leader to be a leader. And, my plant managers were the first ones to kind of jump in. He's like, Mr. Stewart, if we need to run food to so-and-so's family, I can do that. So we had our staff really stepped up and we're making those knock on doors and making sure that people are okay. If we didn't hear from you or you didn't log in for a couple of days, they would be the first ones to volunteer and go knock on the door and make sure everything's okay. So I mean, that was one of the bright spots for me, is really watching people step up to the challenge. And what keeps me up at night, I wish it was just one thing, but the thing that I think of most of all is the things I can't control. Specifically, what if my 7th grade English teacher, what if her husband gets COVID and now she can't report to work? I don't think my school district's alone, but like everyone is so thin financially that you don't have a pool of English teachers or a pool of science or math teachers. You may only have 1 or 2. So what happens if 3 or 4 of my teachers on one campus don't even get sick, but they can't come to school or report to work because of an illness or potential exposure? So how long will we be able to maintain where we are? Because Arizona, we have kind of reached our initial couple of benchmarks, and we're able to resume in a hybrid type of a situation. So we have like an A/B schedule where half of our kids are face-to-face one day, and then the other half are virtual. But again, that puts a lot of extra work on staff. So I wonder how much longer they're going to be able to operate at this high level.
Thanks, Michael. Because as a parent of 4 kids, right, I want my kids to be in school and to be around their friends. But then you think about the operational component and what happens if a teacher gets sick or is exposed. Those are things that I think sometimes we don't think about as a parent. Okay, well, thanks, panelists. We're going to transition to our next question with Kim. So Kim, how are you in your role in the community? How are you addressing the emotional impact to the staff, teachers, students, and your community at large?
As I mentioned, I don't work directly in the classroom because of the relocating. However, as I said before, I created a Ami's World type lesson plan thing where I'm creating opportunity to teach kids how to read, and something that parents can show their kids because they don't really have time to do it. Some of them are working outside the house. This is something that they can show their smaller children. I also am giving teaching tips. I'm showing a list of resources for parents that they can use for math, for science, for social studies, for spelling, just all types of activities they can use, things that are free that they don't have to worry about. Also, I'm uploading some of the different videos that I've learned from myself that I used in my classroom, things from Brain Pop, sharing different things that parents can go on and share teach their children themselves. I've gotten some inbox messages from parents saying they're not really sure how to teach particular lessons. So I'll go on, I'll teach the lesson, I'll send it to the parent. So those are the things that I'm kind of doing to help support the community. Also, some of the things that I would suggest, well, no, I'll save that for later, but that's what I'm doing, pretty much what I'm doing. Just giving different examples, ideas, teaching many things, giving resources, teaching tips and lesson plans so that parents can have ways to instruct children on their own at home.
Thanks, Kim. So, Fran, can you respond to that question?
Sure. You know, the thing about the helping with emotional needs is that, like anytime the rest of the world or the rest of the time, there's a spectrum, right? So you've got families that are having very little reaction, and then you've got families that are really falling apart. And so for me, the most critical thing is accessibility to me and to other resources, and listening, really listening to what's happening for families and for kids. What is it that they need? We're trying to provide all the same kinds of services that we would provide if they were on campus, being very comprehensive with, you know, in-person, one-on-one, not in-person, but virtually, individual counseling sessions, working with parents, consulting with staff, all of the things we would do if we were on campus, but it's definitely different. What I'm trying to really do with what we found in the spring, and I'm still finding now, I feel like I'm doing almost more counseling with our parents right now than with students. Like, I feel like our little kids are pretty resilient and they're rolling with the punches and they're kind of doing okay with, you know, a few kids that have some different struggles. It's the parents I'm hearing from a lot. They're seeing their children as a student in person, for some of them for the first time, you know, and I'm getting calls from parents saying, they won't focus. It's like, yeah, that happens at school too. It's okay. Yeah. You know, and just trying to let them know that this is a 100-year pandemic. We're all in exceptional, extraordinary times. What you're experiencing is similar to what other people are experiencing. And we just are going to have to get through it a day at a time and be patient, right? Communicating. I do think emotionally the impact is bigger on my grown-ups. We're working with staff to be sure that we're providing resources and training. We're communicating with parents and staff with newsletters, with Zooms, just trying to listen, see what they need, and provide the support. We're fortunate that we have incredible community support. We have something called a School Community Collaborative. We meet once a month, and we've got some local churches, we've got the police department, we've got other levels of schools, we've got the city that comes in, and so we've done that for 10 years, and it's more important than ever. So that's an agency, a group, a collaborative that's really trying to support all of our community with basic needs and then with other resources.
Thanks, Fran. I feel better just hearing you talk. So as a parent, so appreciate that. So Michael, what do you think? How are you guys supporting students?
Well, we started last school year off by really trying to implement community circles and restorative circles with our students and staff. So that has been tremendous as the pandemic has continued and rolled out, in that we start every meeting and every class starts with a kind of community circle, and we just kind of take the virtual temperature of everyone in the room and see how they're doing. And as a district, we've kind of given our teachers some more leeway in that, you know what, if something comes up and that's a good topic, then let the agenda go for the day and just focus on where the kids are and or where your staff is if you're running a staff meeting. So really just putting a little more personal touch into it and letting people know that it's okay. You know, sharing out and realizing that, oh, hey, you know what, Allison has the same issues and feelings that I'm having. So maybe it is okay. I'm not out there kind of by myself. You know, and then like the school, we're very unique just because of our size and our location. But, you know, we have a therapy pig on our elementary school campus, you know, so in the pandemic, the kids were, well, how's SB doing? So now SB's got his own Twitter account and his own Instagram and little pig cam, so kids can kind of check in and see how SB's doing every day. So that has been really interesting to watch and see that develop. And then what was kind of surprising from the looking in on it, like all of our teachers are trained on the look fors for stress and those type of things in students. You know, so if a student came in and was exhibiting something, the teacher immediately knows what to do. But when we see it in other adults, we weren't as quick to jump in. So it was kind of reminding everyone that this isn't necessarily a kid issue. If you know your teammate, you know, reach out, you know, just kind of check in on people. So it was interesting seeing how the fight, flight, freeze kind of works across the board and what we are able to see, you know, when we're under this type of a stress.
Hey,
Thanks.
Tony.
Yeah, go ahead, Fran.
I wanted to add a little something too that I was thinking of as Michael was speaking, and that is something our district did district-wide that I was really, really pleased about. Our district really put a push for connection and calm and encouraged every single teacher every morning to do a morning meeting with kids for about 15 minutes to check in with those kids to see where they're at and see how they're doing. And so we're talking about all 39 of our schools are being encouraged, and all the teachers in those schools are being encouraged to put that focus back on wellness and emotional well-being and be sure they're checking in with kids and provided training for that. So I think that was pretty cool to see our district do that. Very, very effective.
That's great. Yeah, I think that connection really, that emotional safety, if that's not addressed front and center, then learning is very difficult to have in a classroom setting. So, okay, well, let's transition to our next question. And Newton, I'm going to address this to you first. So what is, you know, we're thinking from a student perspective. So what is the biggest impact to learning that this situation is manifested? And then what are the views of the students? I think you mentioned that previously. And then how are those views being captured and how are you listening to students?
So honestly, I honestly think that the largest impact will eventually be on the teacher. Right now, of course, we can talk about how the student, you know, has to go through certain, you know, avenues, certain channels to change the way that they learn and, you know, make sure that they speak up for themselves, which is a little bit different. As I go into the classrooms, I mean, raising your hand is different online than it is in the classroom. So just those little things are making a, you know, a huge impact on children. But I really think that the biggest impact on children is made by the teacher. So I just want to speak a little bit about what's happening with the teachers. So, you know, from what I can see, because, you know, we're under this microscope now. Teachers are under this microscope. When I'm teaching your child, everybody in the entire house can hear everything that I'm saying, right? So I have to watch, you know what I mean, and be very cognizant of you know, what I'm doing. And that might not always be the same way I would approach a situation in the classroom, to be honest. The next thing is now our teachers' efficacy is being challenged, right? But it's also an opportunity to build that. You know, we went into this like, can we do this? You know, are we equipped to do this? And now I think, you know, through collaboration, teachers are, you know, building their toolbox. I call it, in my school, I call it your virtual toolbox. They're building these new practices to be able to have that direct impact on the students. So like I said earlier, we take a lot of polls and surveys. So according to our surveys, the kids are enjoying it, right? The kids are, really interested to see what their teacher's going to bring to the table, through this laptop, right? And I think that being that we're online, it helps with the classroom management piece as far as they're right here in front of you, right? They're not going anywhere. But then, it's up to the teacher again to find out ways to engage, the kid virtually, which is another challenge. And then the last question is how are those views being captured? So as we look at our survey data, we bring that to our PLTs and we discuss that. We discuss what, the kids are saying about you, teacher, and now what are you going to do, to address the kids' concerns? So.
Well, I'll tell you what, through the years, obviously all of us who become educators do so for a variety of noble reasons, and it's a calling. But I think that at the end of the day, our parent communities are really seeing how special that who is in the classroom and the giving nature of teachers. And so I'm hearing a newfound respect for teachers throughout, if there's a silver lining from the pandemic. So let's see, what's San Marcos Unified doing?
Well, I think you touched on it a little bit earlier, Tony, when you said your kids, the thing that you're hearing, the reoccurring theme is that they really, really miss their friends. And so when we talk about impact on learning, learning is extremely social. So when we take a look at a typical school day on campus, kids are working collaboratively throughout the day. There's that productive group work, there's partner work, there's that sense of community that's there. And then of course, there's also those informal conversations that are happening too. So school isn't just about the academics, it's also really about that social component. So this shift now has been, how do we bring that component into either a virtual learning platform, or for students who are returning to campus, they're going to be spread apart. Their group work is going to look very different. It's going to be from 6 feet away. So it's not going to be, teachers won't have that huddle on the carpet anymore for their morning meetings, and just really the entire system and operations of the classroom are going to change, whether it is virtual or whether it is back to in-person instruction. So really looking at what we can do to engage students and connect them. And I think that's something that I've really seen evolve since we first closed down in March, is really looking at, I've heard several people mention the morning meetings and the importance of that for checking in, building community, and the SEL component. And that's also a time for students to talk. So when we're talking about how our students' voices heard, that's really the time for the educators to listen and ensure that students are doing okay, and give them that space that's in a positive, safe climate where they can talk about their feelings. And of course, surveying too, as Newton mentioned, we're doing that as well. And the thing about students is they are brutally honest, and they will tell you what they love and they will tell you what they don't love so much. So really taking that feedback and then monitoring and adjusting in accordance with what the kids are saying.
Thanks, Betsy. So Kim, I'm going to give you the last word on this question. So as a consultant, what are you hearing from students?
I'm hearing them say that they miss their friends, that they'd rather be rather be in their classrooms. They'd rather have some social time. They'd rather be with their friends. They feel bored. They don't want to be online. So I'm hearing a lot of the other side. I know there are some kids who are excited to get online, but after a while it gets old. I also heard a teacher who's a friend of mine who said she doesn't feel like she shines online. So they're worried about whether or not they're making a good impact if they're keeping the kids engaged. So some of those suggestions would be to have give them like the gardening idea. Like, you teach a lesson and say, why don't you make a garden, and take care of that garden and see what that looks like. Take some pictures and upload them and share them with friends. Something a little more steamy so that the kids are more engaged and it seems fun. I think that if we make it fun, that the kids will be, the hands-on minds-on concept, the kids will be a little more engaged, and then the teachers won't feel like they're not shining and kids won't be bored. So make it fun.
Thanks, Kim. I think one of the things that I'm hearing is that there really is the pedagogy of teaching online is different than being face-to-face. And so those who have been most successful in the transition have been open to different types of direct instruction and certainly embracing the technology. Okay, well, thanks, Kim. All right, next question. So what supports are available to students with exceptionalities, including gifted, talented, students with disabilities, and English language learners? And I'm going to throw this one to Fran to start.
So we're trying to provide the same levels of service to all of those students that we did when we were in person. And now we're just having to do that virtually and having them be in a smaller group setting online. So they're getting some of their same services. Our teachers are differentiating for them in class. Our teachers at Los Penn, and I think across our district, are doing a really nice job of doing a group teaching like they would in class, and then they're still breaking off into smaller groups. And you have that capacity to do that in Zoom. And so then they're able to really check in on just 5 kids instead of trying to address 33 kids. And so that's where our students are receiving those kinds of services of gifted and talented, of ELL, our resource, our speech. In some ways, it almost feels like they might even be getting a little bit more because I think we're having a little bit more time, if that makes any sense at all. But because the teachers aren't Zooming with them all day, but when they're in class, they're teaching them all day. Our specialists have more access to the students. We also, in some instances, are having our students actually come on campus right now with things set up in an appropriate way for them. But they're getting really effective services for their specialities.
Great. Betsy, in your role, what are you seeing?
I'm seeing very similar to what Fran said, but when we look at resource allocation at the district level, we really need to look at that through the lens of equity and giving the extra support to our students who need it the most. So to echo what Fran said, what that looks like right now, because we are virtual, is small group instruction, one-on-one individualized support, extra tutoring for kids who are referred for that. And then in our schedule, we have an enrichment and intervention block built into the day so that is that time, that protected time where teachers are able to pull students who need it. And that's, of course, flexible depending on what they're seeing that the needs are. And then for our English learners, of course, every day providing students with designated and integrated ELD, continuing to differentiate the instruction. And we have co-teaching happening between our special educators and general educators, where they're, just as they were physically together in a classroom co-teaching and offering those supports, they're doing that now online. And we have some of that as well with our EL coordinators at the secondary level. And then I think also just ensuring that we have extra supports for the parents and caregivers as well, because they are doing quite a heavy lift right now. They're taking a really active role in their children's education. It's not dropping them off and then picking them up at the end of the day. They really have that front row seat. So we're offering parent workshops, especially for our Spanish-speaking families, on how to navigate distance learning and help their students to succeed. We have helplines, technology helplines set up for our families, because that is a really big bone of contention. Is sometimes it's hard. I mean, if you're not an educator, you're probably not proficient in 30 different online educational platforms. So coaching them through it, having those video tutorials in dual languages available, and just really that outreach and availing students and families assistance if they need it, and just constant communication.
Thanks, Betsy and Fran. It sounds like both are doing a phenomenal job considering the circumstances of really trying to meet the needs of our students with exceptionalities. And so, and I know that's not easy. Okay, so we're going to pivot a little bit and we're gonna talk about attendance and policies. So how are districts being flexible when the scope of mandates and policies? Michael, I'm going to ask you this question.
It's a two-part, well, it's a multi-part answer, but the start of it is there's two main points you want to focus on, and we've tried to focus on. And the first one is let's not make assumptions about our kids and our families. So let's think about resources and what they have available. Like if we're online and who can I pick on? Denise isn't checking in every Tuesday and Thursday. Denise doesn't check in. Well, turns out that Denise had the one working computer in the house. So her brother, sister, cousin, or whatever was using it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So she didn't come to school that day. Let's not be punitive in marking her absent or not giving her credit for that day. I mean, the work's getting done. Yes, check. And then the other part is really taking full advantage of any ambiguous language in any law, statute, or anything else that's out there. Again, back to attendance. If it doesn't say specifically that the student has to be in a seat, for X amount of hours a day, and if the expectation is that they're going to be virtually there on screen with you that full day, you know what? They're still getting the work in every day. It might be checking in between 11:30 and 12, but the work's getting done. Well, let's not make the assumption that the kid is slacking or that the work, that there's something going on. But maybe that's the best time that the internet works, or maybe they're working to support their family and they rush home and check in and do their work, and they were doing all their work offline and they just upload it at the last minute. Let's keep in mind that they're, in this instance, I'm talking about teenagers. So it's what they do. They wait to the last minute and that's the time they're up. So being flexible and working around those type of benchmarks and things, we really, with the elementary school and the youngers, it's keeping them involved. And again, going back to the community circles and checking in and making sure that they're okay. We think, a 6-year-old is just rolling with it and having fun, but they notice a lot of these things. So like, what can we do to support our littles and make sure that they're okay? Let's let this behavior go. This kid isn't acting out. They're just responding to what's happening at home and what more than likely they're listening to and hearing on the news. So again, I think Newton mentioned it earlier. It's about grace and giving grace, not just to our students and families, but to ourselves. This is hard. It's a hard job normally, and then you throw all these other things on. So why would you expect to get it right? Like, we've never trained you for this. We've never even in our wildest dreams thought that this would be a possibility. So let's kind of give ourselves some grace and work with it. So if there's flexibility and we're able to do that, then we give full flexibility and make sure that everyone is getting as much resources and help and work that they need. I mean, you can't replace a zero. Like, you can't recover from a zero.
Right.
So why would you want to do that to somebody who's given it a good effort? And we just really encourage that from all of our staff, from the top down.
Thanks, Michael. And so, Newton, you mentioned grace. How, as a classroom teacher or a site administrator, how are you dealing with district policies and mandates?
So let me just start by saying our district has done an excellent job listening and responding to the feedback of the parents, teachers, administrators. Like, they're really hearing us and they're making changes. So for instance, we started all of this by saying no recorded lessons, right? We were saying that, the teachers had to be online delivering that live face-to-face instruction. And then when it became a problem and, teachers voiced their concerns and parents voiced their concerns, saying, well, I can't get on it this time. This has to happen first. We changed it. And I really appreciate things like that, because what it says to the parents and to the teachers is your opinion and your perspective is valued, and I'm here to serve you. And that's what it's all about. We've changed our curriculum pacing. So we use something called EL education, and it's broken down into 4 quarters, 4 modules rather, each quarter. And we cut the 4th module out, and now we spread 3 modules over the entire year, just to give that flexibility, to teachers, so that they're not rushing through their lessons. I thought that was, an amazing, job on our district, or by our district, for making that kind of change, because that comes from feedback. That comes from teachers voicing their concerns about those kind of things. As far as attendance, our district did say that as long as the kid logs in, they're counted here. If they don't even have to log in, but as long as they're turning in their work, they're also, marked present. We also have a thing where we're not making, and I love this, we're not making kids turn on their camera, because we want to be sensitive to their home environments. And I love things like that, because I've been in homes, right? And I see how some things, you just don't want to show everybody in the classroom everything that's going on in the background, right? So, I appreciate our teachers for, handling and working through that in our district to make sure that that's something that, we're all doing. We're norming grades, just things that, some practices, we've already been doing, but now they're just amplified, because now we really see the need, for these conversations. And I just think that, this pandemic is going to do more good to education than we think it is. I think that it's forcing some conversations to happen. And if we're smart, we'll learn from it. And, we'll build our toolbox, our virtual toolbox. And from here on out, we'll become better teachers and better parents.
Tony?
Thanks, Newton. Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I just wanted to just piggyback on something Newt said. I had some parents who were concerned about the way they had their house set up for their kids' classroom. They don't necessarily have a desk, and the kid may be sitting on the couch, and they were concerned that that video camera was going to show their home. So I really love that that's what they're doing in Newton School. I'm not sure if that has happened here, but I'm going to take that back to the school board, because I think that's very important to consider, the home or the space that the parent has set up for the child. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even teaching families how to create virtual backgrounds if there's something that if you're concerned about the background. Okay. Well, no, great suggestion, Newton. Thanks for the feedback there. That's really useful. So we are this hour plus is going fast. So I'm going to ask 2 more questions. And so the first question is, how will your school sustain support to the community even as in-person instruction resumes? And I'm going to have Betsy respond to that question.
Well, it's going to be quite a while before it's business as usual in our school systems. And even as we do start to go back to in-person learning, it's going to be a slow rollout, and it's going to be a hybrid model here in our district for the duration of the year. So essentially, students are going to be engaged in a blended learning model where they're at home some days and at school some days. So that again is going to require yet another shift. So I think as we continue these shifts, it's really important to continue to offer those supports. And I think communication is key. Really letting parents know that we're partners with them and we are here to support them in every step of the way in terms of the instructional supports, and as well as the other things I talked about earlier, having your devices, your accessibility, your meals, your mental health resources on hand. And I think what we will continue to do is to build our bank of resources through those workshops, we're doing a lot of pre-recorded videos as opposed to live workshops so that parents can access those anytime, anywhere. We have our school social workers actually working on a bank of resources for our parents in terms of how to support the well-being of their students at home and that social emotional component, as well as continuing all of the technology helplines and video tutorials and things like that. But I think what it really comes down to is kind of drilling down to the site level and really knowing your students and knowing your community and just really working together as a team at the school, involving your classified staff, your teachers, office staff, everybody coming together, administrators, and really conducting that outreach and just checking in with your families often to see what it is that they need and then really being responsive to that.
Let's see. Fran, last word on this question.
She did a lot of great words on it already. I'm not sure I can really add anything.
Yeah.
I was really happy to see that now, I believe it's statewide, that all of our kids can have food. So I love that breakfast and lunch is being served to any student. They don't have to qualify for that. Because the basic human needs were a big concern for us initially with the pandemic, with what was going to happen for all of our students. So just being sure that those basic human needs are being met. And the technology, you know, Newton was talking about this earlier, being sure that all the kids have technology. Our challenge that we're really finding is we gave them a laptop, but we still can't hear them because their internet is so bad. So that equity and access, to be sure all our kids have that, we are really going to have to do some work around that to be sure that we have good connections with the kids.
No, it's funny that they say that, you know, even before we started today's session, you know, I personally had some tech issues. So,
Yeah.
you know, flexibility around being just having access, not, you know, regular access to the internet, but, you know, being able to access the classroom, those are things that we have to continue to monitor and continue to advocate for our kids. Okay, so all right. Well, we're down to our last question. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to respond. And so we'll go in the order of the introductions. And so here's a question. What is your best recommendation to guide parents for schooling? And what message of hope would you give to parents?
I think you said Fran. Speaking
Yes.
of technology.
Yes, yes.
I have one word for everybody, and that is breathe. We just need to breathe, and we need to be in the moment. And also, I think that, as I mentioned earlier, we want to recognize that our kids have far more resiliency, oftentimes, than the grown-ups. And so the grown-ups are, of course, very worried about their children and that they're okay. But they are resilient. They're going to gain different life skills from this experience than they would never have that opportunity in another lifetime. I also think just that recognizing we're part of history. Look at pictures from the Spanish flu back in the early 1900s. Have kids keep a diary, either in writing or in pictures. You know, just maximize this experience and opportunity. Turn it into a positive experience. Find the
Thanks,
silver.
Oh. Thanks, Fran. Betsy.
No, I really want to reassure all of the parents out there that they are doing an amazing job. They are under a tremendous amount of stress and trying to balance personal responsibilities and professional responsibilities and childcare and supporting kids in school all simultaneously. So I would want to say, you know, release any notions of perfectionism. It does not exist. If anybody is putting things on Instagram about how they're taking a morning hike and then making homemade lavender jam and then doing a perfect job, it's not reality. Embrace the mess. We are in it together, and we will come out stronger and more resilient than ever from this. And, you know, I would want to tell parents, do not be afraid to reach out and communicate. Your kids' teachers are there to support you. They are there to support your child. The kids are really our top priority. Any personnel really at the school is available to help you and wants you and your child to succeed. If you're at the point where your child is crying and you're crying, and you want to lock yourself in the bathroom for the rest of the day, I would say take a break from whatever that task is. It's not more important than you being a parent, because you're a parent first and a teacher second at this point. So let your kids know that they're safe and they're loved and they're cared for, and the rest will fall into place. But we as an educational community are here to support you.
Thanks, Betsy. Kim.
I would say find some fun ways to keep your kids engaged. Look for those free resources. Grab some of those books now, because they're going to need to have those books in hand now because they're online too much. So get those books from the library. Take them out in the yard. Find some things in the community. Contact some local communities. Do some virtual tours. Do something fun. Get them away from the computer when you can and give them something else to do. Hands-on, minds-on. That's what I would say.
Thanks, Kim. Newton.
Yes. So I would tell parents to use this data, right? Right now we're collecting data on how school is going to look, right? Or the changes that we need to make to education. And, you know, I want the parents to know that your voices are heard. Your concerns are going to be addressed, you know, and considered, you know, so keep voicing those concerns and keep staying involved and engaged, you know, in your child's learning. Also would ask parents to extend grace to their child and their child's teacher, right? Everybody is not, you know, going to get everything on the first on the first try, you know, not even the teacher. The teacher may mess up, you know, the teacher may approach something in a way that, you know, you may not agree with, but we have to extend that grace. And then the message of hope would be that support is support, man. You don't have to be a certified teacher. You don't have to have a master's, doctorate, you know, to help your child. Help them with what you can help them with. If that is, hey, get that book out and start reading out loud so I can hear you while I cook or while I do this, then we need to do that as parents, you know, and that's something that, you know, I'm learning myself. I'm not a kindergarten, first grade teacher, but there's some things that I know, you know, I know what's right. And I know that, you know, this homework needs to be done. We need to be logged on. So, you know, support is support, right? And that's what, that's my message, you know, to our parents.
Yeah, I can't help my kids with some of their homework, but certainly I can make sure that. All right, Michael, what do you think?
I'd say practice grace and assume positive intent as often as possible. You can't over communicate when it comes to advocating for your child. It's okay to be that parent. I tell every one of my kids' teachers, beginning of the year, I'm going to be that parent. I'm going to be the one. Just let it be known. And then the other thing I think is probably one of the most important things is that the only other people who love your child more than you do are the teachers. They wouldn't do it otherwise. So it kind of goes back to assuming the positive intent. And if you know the teacher didn't respond or didn't see so-and-so's hand up on the Zoom screen, it's not because they don't like your child or they're mad at your child. They just didn't see it. You know, so assume the positive intent. We love kids, and that's why we're here.
That's great. Yeah, sometimes I think we forget about just the calling of being an educator, and sometimes extending grace to those teachers goes a long way, for sure. So, all right. Well, we are asking and Denise if there are any questions for our panelists.
We didn't have a question, but our dean shared something that I think came by in the chat that I think is worth restating. And she said, we owe so much to the noble profession of education. The panel here is the personification of the service, heart, demeanor, brilliance, and empathy that it takes to tackle this important work. So on behalf of all of us, we want to thank all of you educators for what you're doing for our own children and all the children out there.
Hear, hear. Denise, any questions?
Totally well stated, Allison. I think there are a lot of accolades in the chat about how powerful this conversation was and how people wish it could go on longer. that you have touched a nerve and a heart for people who are participating, and they have really found this series to be valuable. But I think this particular panel has really resonated with the audience.